All right, welcome everyone to scuba class. Just turn your cameras on for a moment so I can at least capture everybody for our session here. We are going to get to know each other a lot better in person, but it is nice to see your faces. I know if you're anything like me, you're like, where did January go? We're at the end of the month already, and it's just been one thing after another, a lot going on. So and I did say that I was going to mention something to you in the first lecture that I didn't. And I mentioned safety protocols, just so everyone knows. I have leukemia. In fact, I spent the whole day at the cancer center yesterday getting treatment. So it's not just for my safety, for everyone else's safety, that we make sure that we're just extra careful so nobody else gets sick. So I do have extra precautions in place. My doctors have told me anything could kill me. And so I just hope, you know, out of respect for making sure that I stay safe and everyone else stays safe, that you don't mind just complying with some of the rules that I have in place to make sure that you know, nobody gets sick. Okay. Because if I get sick, I might not survive it, seriously. So that being said, all the icky stuff out of the way, my dog is super excited because I have foster kittens. And so I'll be pushing some of my kittens and puppies on people, but he's actually whining right now to see them. So hopefully it's not distracting. Does anyone have questions about the email that I sent and all the information that was embedded in it, including the schedule? Any questions? All right, no questions. We'll just move on then. It's a quiet bunch tonight. All right. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Oops, one moment. That's not what I wanted to do. Just a second. My dog is distracting me. All right, I did it again. Just a second here. Sorry. Let me stop sharing again. All right, it's going to work this time. I'm confident. Okay. I think the brain is the actual thing not working. So, all right. Well, we are going to get started and we're going to cover a lot of information tonight. I know a couple of you haven't yet had a chance to get the materials from me, and hopefully you can do that pretty soon. So let's see here. There we go. Okay. So teaching team, you might get to meet Walt tonight. I hope so. And hopefully you'll get to meet everybody else too. We have people with different schedules. Ronny has a night class and he's coming on in a bit. Jacob is teaching after me, and we have Ximena here, and Victor will be on later, and Bill is here and he'll be teaching tonight as well. So our tentative schedule that I sent to everyone via email, it looks like this. We are on lecture 2 right now. We're going to cover modules 3 and 4, and we're going to get into part of 5. That I'll just tell you, you need to really stay focused tonight, because we have a lot of information, especially as we get later, is some of the most important information. We're going to start getting into dive tables. Our next lecture after that is February 1st, and then we have February 9th. We'll do exam review. We have a pool set. We have 3 pool sessions scheduled, but for everyone who's here right now, we have the 19th and the 12th, March 12th. So if anyone doesn't need to get certified, you know, before spring break, you might consider hopping over to the 12th pool session. So, but otherwise we're good. We're good. We have good numbers. So, and we have everyone. Finn, stop whining. I'm sorry. I don't know if any of you has dogs, but it's very distracting. All right. So swimming requirements, just to remind you of those. You really need to get in the pool if you haven't been in one lately, and practice the 300-yard surface swim, the 50-foot underwater swim. You can have a push off, and the 15-minute tread water. Just to review a couple things, this is the interactive part. So if you guys could tell me if you remember some of these things. Pressure, 33 feet of salt water, 34 feet of fresh water, 14.7 psi. All right, you tell me, somebody tell me, what is the composition of air? What's it made of?
Nitrogen and oxygen.
Nitrogen, oxygen, and other. Very good. Any guesses on the percentage?
Like 70 something
nitrogen and 20 something oxygen.
Yeah, so it's not 70 something, 78% nitrogen. If we're rounding up and down, 21% oxygen and 1% other. Good. We're going to start giving you some information where you're going to see things over and over again. Can anyone tell me what Boyle's law is?
It's the P1 V1 equals P2 V2. So if the pressure increases, the volume will have to decrease, or vice versa.
Impressive. Very good. Yes. So pressure and volume are inversely proportional. What about Dalton's law? Can anyone tell me what Dalton's law is? Dalton's law. Feel free to look it up. That's okay. Anyone?
So it's that a mixture of non-reacting gases are equal, the total pressure is equal to the sum of the non-reactive of the individual gases.
Okay, so what's another way of saying that? My dive masters, what's the easy way of saying it?
Each of the gases acts independently of each other.
There you go. Excellent. Very good. Henry's law. Who can tell me what Henry's law is?
At a constant temperature, the amount of given gas that dissolves in a given volume of liquid is directly proportional to the partial pressure of that gas.
All right. That sounds like you read it, and that's quite all right. Start to remember those things. What about Archimedes' principle? Archimedes' principle? Remember the rocks?
Yeah, this is the one with the displacement and when you put something in water, the amount that it displaces is the volume of the mass of the object, something like this.
Good. It has to do with the object being forced up, right? So it has to do with buoyancy. Yes, very good. All right, a couple more things. Scuba cylinders need an annual visual inspection and a 5-year hydrostatic test. Who can tell me what percentage of a fill a cylinder will have with a hydrostatic test? To what amount of its capacity will it be filled?
80%.
5/3 of its capacity. So it's actually overfilled intentionally. What temperature do you use wetsuits in, or should you use wetsuits in typically?
80 degrees.
Very good. Which is the first color to disappear on as you descend?
Red.
All right, I heard it from several people. Very good. How are objects going to appear underwater?
Enlarged.
Bigger and closer.
Yes, very good. Closer and larger. How often should you clear your ears?
That's necessary.
Every 2 feet.
Early and often. Early and often. What's the cardinal rule of scuba diving when it comes to breathing?
Always breathe.
Yes, you got it. You got it. Now, last time we did talk a lot about ears, and I just wanted to remind you about ears and how important it is to clear your ears to make sure that you don't end up with squeeze or reverse block. So clear early and often. Otherwise, you might end up with middle ear barotrauma. We don't want that. So make sure that you know how to clear your ears, okay? We went over some maneuvers last time. I also shared with you, or maybe I think Ronny might have shared with you about Dox Pro plugs and ear shield. And we also talked a little bit about Sudafed as a possible way of helping you. We went over these ear clearing maneuvers, which we'll practice again soon. But do practice your ear clearing. We want to protect your ears throughout this. Okay. So any questions so far as we're getting restarted here? All right, well, Jacob is going to take over from here, and I'm going to go ahead and make the others who just joined co-hosts and try to get my dog to stop whining. All right, Jacob, are you with us? Jacob?
Hello.
Jacob?
I said my computer's being slow.
Oh, okay, I couldn't hear you.
Okay. Assuming you can see it.
Yes, we got it. Thank you.
So regulators. And my thing's not working.
We're having technology issues today. Try using the right arrow on your keypad.
I was doing that and I'm also clicking. Nothing's happening.
It's probably just locked up. All right.
There it goes.
There it goes. Okay.
Okay. So regulators, submersible pressure gauge will take the cylinder pressure and be able to tell the diver what the pressure is. There's two pressure stages, both known as the second stages. This is an open circuit system we'll be using. The first stage has low pressure and high pressure ports. Typically fewer high pressure ports than low pressure. Second stages are all low pressure. And that's what you'd be breathing from and also inflating your buoyancy compensator from. These are just some close-up images of the regulators. We have a Titan, which is a pretty sure diaphragm first stage, and then a balanced second stage. So the first stage, this is an example of, I think, a Mark II Plus. It has a 7/16 high pressure port, which is for the submersible pressure gauge, or computer transmitter. Low pressure ports, they're 3/8 in size. They're for breathing, inflation, and dry suit inflation, which uses the same mechanism and same hose. Regulator care, you will need to take care of Gabrielle's regulators. They're hers, not yours. You can destroy yours however you want whenever you get your own, but you need to take care of hers. So especially after saltwater diving, they can corrode very easily. So rinse after each dive, soap outside of their dive series. Make sure the dust cap is on and don't press the purge button while you're cleaning it and everything. They do need to be annually serviced with a full service every 2 years. So this is an example of a rinse station. There's typically two different buckets. One is less salty because it's less used, usually for like camera gear and other gear like that. The other one is for like your PC, and I think you can do it with your cylinder.
Yeah, let me just clarify a little bit about that. So the two buckets are normally just for all of your gear, and what we recommend is that you clean your most expensive important things first, like your regulators first, and then your BCs, and then the wetsuits. And so typically these are kind of used the same. There are smaller buckets that are usually on a dive boat, and those are going to be labeled, sometimes labeled, not always. They're going to be, one is for cameras and one is for masks. Whenever you have a question about like which bucket you should use, ask somebody, because it's really important. People who have cameras are not going to be happy if you put your mask in their camera bucket, because there's, material on your mask that can damage the cameras. So, but these buckets, when you get off of a dive boat, typically everyone is just in a hurry to get off and try to clean. Try to get off the boat soon and be one of the first ones to clean, and definitely start with the really, delicate stuff like your regulators first.
So some alternate air sources. Some people prefer redundancy, some people don't. The octopus and Air 2 are provided from the same cylinder and same system, so it's non-redundant. The pony bottles are redundant because they are fully separate systems. And these are just different systems for an alternate air source. The integrated ones for an octopus would only be if your first stage were to free flow or have an issue, or if your buddy is out of air. So information systems. You have analog, which is typically integrated and not actually connected to show like pressure. They just are there and read your depth and time and all those things just without the gas pressure. Analog is also what your normal gauge without a computer system is, but you can get a computer version. An actual computer with AI, which is a transmitter, which would be the one in the middle where it's a wrist watch and then a weird thing behind it, that's a transmitter. Next to it is an integrated computer, and this actually tells you your pressure and all that stuff. And then a compass, and these can be mounted in the boot of the pressure gauge and everything, or it can be worn on the wrist. Typically they're going to be already in the boot, or you can get them in the boot. So compass, it's used for navigation for the most part in the water. Again, you can mount on wrist or in a console, and always follow the lever line. So any direction you're traveling, make sure the red line, which is the lever line, is exactly pointing in the direction you're going. And then you can use the bezel to change the degree by just alternating your body to get the north into the 0 degree mark. So you have a bezel, which is a rotating plastic piece on top. A north pointing arrow tells you which way is north. Now, these are different from a normal compass. The digits on the inside are actually reversed. So the 0, which is in like the south position, is actually showing as if it's in the north position, and it's designed like this so you can look through the window or the side window to actually read which way you're going if you're looking at it like that. The card shows all the numbers and information, and the lens capsule is what it's inside of. So when using a compass, the picture of the guy is example of like a wrist mounted compass. He has it where the lever line is parallel in the direction he's going, and he's looking through or close to the side window and keeping his objective where he's trying to go the way he's going. So accessories. So dive lights, they're for just open water, it's not necessarily a need, it's just kind of a want. You don't have to have it. Dive knives are typically used for spearfishing, and then line cutters are used for any kind of entanglement or line or anything.
Hey, Jacob, dive knives aren't just used for spearfishing. In fact, most of us who dive in the ocean do carry knives. We carry it mainly for cutting line.
I said line cutter.
Oh, I thought you said spearfishing.
I said both.
Okay.
Dive flag, you need that for diving in navigable waters, which is anywhere a boat can travel. SMB or safety sausage, there can also be DSMB. These are typically required on charters or most saltwater dives, but it's good to have if you're doing saltwater. So specialized equipment, nitrox diving. It's just an enriched gas with some more oxygen in it. This gives you more bottom time, but you need special training. It also reduces decompression sickness, but you have to do a little bit more math before going down. Extended range is more for technical diving. Like I said, it's beyond recreational, so beyond what you would be doing. And this is just a picture of a cave diver. Rebreather systems. These are closed circuit systems. There's also semi-closed circuit systems, but you're usually going to see either open circuit or closed circuit. Buddy system. You're always going to have a buddy, and you need to have them for safety. And you should swim very close to each other. So buddies help with reminders. They're going to help with setting up gear, getting into the gear, checking each other and making sure everything is set and ready. And they also provide some feedback and you work together. So a good buddy, always do a buddy check and help on the surface, but before and after the dive, and continues a buddy check kind of throughout the dive. Some things can, like an O-ring can pop out of place in the middle of a dive, and it's good to let your buddy know. And they stay close while underwater. So the buddy check, you want to make sure the air is on, cylinders full, make sure the cam band is tight, the hoses are in the correct positions and everything. Make sure the BC power inflator is connected, and make sure their weight system is in place and that they didn't forget to add weight or to make sure they're not wearing too much. Make sure they're physically and emotionally fit. If they are extremely, extremely stressed, it's best to just let them come back another time. Make sure you're close enough to render assistance in an emergency while diving with them, especially on any kind of turbid or deep dives. And make sure you're within touch distance if you're training or if it's a challenging dive. And make sure you keep good awareness of your buddy and also people around you. So positioning, you should agree on positions before the dive, like where each one of you wants to be. Typically the best is to be side by side. One behind the other is least desirable and is typically only used for guides or either cave dives. So each of you should go over and know the general direction, depth, and time and planned activities during the dive. And if any changes are made, everyone needs to be in agreement. And look for your buddy every minute. So what happens if you lose your buddy? First, look around. Don't do it longer than a minute. Use noise signals if you have them. There's shakers. You can get like these little horns like Gabrielle and Ronny and them use. If visibility is bad, typically the best thing to do is ascend a little and circle around, look for bubbles. You'd be surprised, you can see the bubbles further away than you can see the diver. After a minute, if you can't find them, ascend to the surface. And while on the surface, you can typically see bubbles somewhere. And if you can't, make an emergency call. Buddy diving, it's all about sharing an activity together, just enjoying the dive, but you also need to be safe at the same time. Basic summary. So equipment, exposure suits, weighting systems, all this. Equipment, we'll be going over that more in depth on the pool session. Exposure suits, you know the temperature, it's 80 degrees for most wetsuits. Buoyancy compensators and all the other equipment.
Thank you, Jacob. You can go ahead and stop sharing, and I know that Bill is going to take over from there. But I did want to say with wall diving, if anyone likes to dive in places like the Bahamas, we do a lot of wall diving, and with wall diving, we also tend to have one person diving in front of the other one, because if you're diving side by side, the outside person isn't going to get to see anything cool. So what we like to do is have one person lead one way and then the other person lead the other way, so that you each get a chance to lead. So that's another time when, you know, side by side is definitely ideal, but when it wouldn't really be as ideal. So, but great job, Jacob. Thank you.
All right, yeah, thanks, Jacob. That was great. So my name is Bill. I'm going to be going over, excuse me, module 4 with you, and that's the skills needed to dive safely. So what we have here is water entries, scuba skills, managing excess stress, managing physical problems, managing emergencies, and introduction to dive tables. We will be going over all that. That's going to be great. All right, so water entries. The water entries that we'll be doing is shore, surf, and boat. We don't do too much surf diving, but shore around springs and stuff like that, and then lots of boats, charter boats.
We do surf with the jetties, don't we?
That's right. And actually, I was thinking about that, and I should have mentioned it. So you see pictures here of the different entries. You see a back roll entry there to the bottom left. To the right there, you see a giant stride, and to the top right there, it's covered up. You got to see a surf entry. All right, so surface snorkeling to the dive site. Does anybody want to guess why we do that? Why
Save
would
your
we
air.
snorkel? That's right. You'll save your air for diving, because you'll want to dive more than you'll want to snorkel, I would imagine. So snorkel to the site, and then you're going to switch to the regulator. And before you go down, you want to go ahead and equalize. So equalize early and often. You always want to breathe. You never want to hold your breath, or never ever. And exhale continuously if your regulator is out of your mouth. So you need to be blowing bubbles, just a small amount of bubbles out of your mouth if your regulator is ever out of your mouth. So correct weighting. So no air in the BC, floating above the mast. So you float in the water with no air in your BC, and you should just be floating right above your mast. And that's how you would determine how much weight you should truly need. As you get more experience, you'll need less and less weight, because you'll be more comfortable in the water and you'll be able to relax more, which will help you get down also. And you can see here, descending on a line, which is my favorite, as opposed to, just sinking. Descending on a line, typically charter boat, you can see a buoy here where they're going to pull themselves down, but you grab the rope and you pull yourself down to the wreck or wherever you're going, and explore down there and save your energy for diving on the bottom. All right, and again, clear your ears early and often. So I can't say that enough. Start up top, and then every 2 to 3 feet, you want to go ahead and try to clear your ears. If you do have a problem clearing your ears, you want to go back up about 3 to 4 feet, and then try to go ahead and clear your ears again. Typically, that will let you go ahead and get your ears cleared. So at depth, inflate your BC to become neutral. Does anybody know why you would inflate your BC to become neutral at depth?
Because the air pressure changes. The pressure
compresses in your BC. All right, neutrally buoyant, diver trim and position. You want to remain horizontal in the water, and proper weighting will sure help you get there. Too light, too heavy. You see the diver on the left who is face down would be too light, and you see the diver on the right there with the feet down and the head up would show you that they're wearing a little bit too much weight. And you see definitely here this guy's way too light. All right, and learn to streamline. You want to keep everything tucked in as neat as you possibly can. You don't want anything hanging down like gauges, or you see this picture here where the octo is hanging down, the gauge is hanging around. That could hit reefs and damage those, or any other, life that's out there that needs to be delicate with. And you can see here that they are making a little bit of dust, but they're dragging the octopus on the bottom, which definitely isn't good for the octopus either. All right, so during ascent, you want to check your gauges and begin a safe ascent. Now, a safe ascent, does anybody know what rate that would be at? Anybody want to guess? I know somebody knows.
We actually talked about it last time, so hopefully some people remember. I think
All
Jake
right.
talked about it last time.
Yes.
Then-
So it,
Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. I thought you wanted to stop every, like, I don't remember if it was 7 or 15.
well, a safety stop would be the last thing you do. You would stop at 15 feet for 3 minutes. But going
Okay.
back up, typically
But you
like
wanted to exhale every 3 minutes or every 2
Uh,
minutes?
No. You want to continuously breathe. You don't want to, hold your breath going up, and then exhale. You definitely don't want to ever do that.
Okay.
That could cause some trauma to your lungs, especially. But it's basically hand over hand. If you're going up a rope, like you have a down line, you also go back up that line. So it's hand over hand, which seems pretty slow, but it's a safe rate to go. And I believe that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's 30 feet a minute. Is that right? Let's see. All right. And finally, using a line is better. And I was just thinking that earlier tonight. That is certainly my preference. And I believe I might have mentioned that earlier. And then finally, advantages of a buddy, sharing, safety, planning a dive. Make sure you plan your dive your plan. So you want to look at the depth, the time, what time you want to turn around, what pressure you want to turn around, what to see, and then work out the hand signals that you're going to use, and what you would do if you become separated. So with that, it's been great teaching with you guys, but I'm going to turn it over to Ronny.
Thank you, Bill. If I might say just a couple of things about the entries. When you showed the picture of them walking backward in the shore, I wanted to let you know that the book was written by people who do diving in California, and the waves in California are a lot bigger than the waves here. So what we do, the book is going to tell you that you're going to walk backward with your fins on and your regulator in your mouth. But if we did that here, where our sand is beautiful and soft, we would lose our fins. It would not be very smart. What we do is we actually walk forward. And then if there's a breaker, if there's a little wave, we turn our back. We have our snorkel in our mouth, not our regulator, because we're walking forward. It doesn't make sense. We don't have big waves here. So just a little bit about that. So, okay. Thank you, Bill. That was great.
Okay.
And 30 feet per minute is correct.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I'm going to be going over hand signals. So I'm going to show you. So I want you all to follow, like mirror me essentially. So first we're going to do okay underwater. So that's this. We do this for photos all the time as well. So you get very used to this signal.
So everyone turn your cameras on and follow along with Ronny, please.
So, this is how you signal. When we put this up, this is also a question. So not only is it an answer, it's also a question. So if we throw you this, we're asking, are you okay? You signal back, yes, I am okay. Or you say, something's wrong. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, on the surface, especially if someone's on a boat, they might not be close. So you're going to do fist on the head. We've also seen ballerina, but most people just tend to do fist on the head. And that's how you signal to the boat that you're okay. Ear problems. So like I was kind of showing earlier, problem, ear. So if you have a problem somewhere else, problem, whatever you're having a problem with, whether it's a hose issue or whatever it is, you just point to that and we'll try to help you out to our best ability. Hold this depth. So that's important for a couple of reasons. If there's no floor to keep us from going deeper, you want to make sure you don't go deeper than your furthest depth. And then we also use that for safety stops. So we'll do at the end of the dive, like I think Virginia was talking about, we had the 3-minute safety stop. So 3 minutes at 15 feet, safety stop. And that's how we end every dive, just as a safety precaution. Buddy up, it's 2 fingers, go like that. So that either means where's your buddy or find your buddy, because that either means we know where they are and they're not close by and we want you to see that, or we're generally just making sure we have everyone in the group. So this next one, we don't use, but it is used in the Georgia Aquarium and a couple other places, that we less commonly visit. So low on air, that means, you're low on air. But the one that we actually use is out of air. So obviously that's a super important one. So that way we can know to end a dive or provide assistance or whatever the situation is. This next one's also important. So up or ascend, that's how you end a dive. And then there's the inverse when you're starting a dive, descend to start the dive. But for this one, you have to remember, when you see something cool underwater, don't give us the thumbs up, because that means you're done diving and you want to end your dive. So give us a cool, shaka, or usually we can tell by expressions and whatnot underwater how excited people are. So
Ronny, excuse me, could you do the okay underwater? I had the video minimized and I couldn't see what you were doing. Okay.
Yeah, okay underwater. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay, so that was up, ascend, not cool, and then help is usually just waving. So you just, especially if you have a light or something like that, you wave the light. But yeah, just waving at people usually kind of gets them understanding like something is going on. They'll come over and help you out. Some other ones that aren't on here are stuff like animals. So I think this is like jelly, shark, turtle. I have a hard time with that one personally. I think they used this for eel, and then I use this for crab sometimes because I find cute little crabs when you're ocean diving usually. Trying to think if there's anything else that we forgot.
Lionfish.
Oh, I didn't know that one. Okay.
Yeah.
And then what was the octopus one again? Okay.
And that's not universal, just so you know. So any resort you go to, they're going to teach you different hand signals too, but some of them are, shark is without fail, everyone does shark. So, but it is fun because when you start to see with local culture, like I was just looking through pictures from Indonesia, and they had wobbegong sharks all over the place, and they had a special sign for wobbegongs. And I don't see those sharks hardly anywhere else but Indonesia. So it was just really interesting. So, and then what about some of the other ones?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So another thing that we're definitely going to ask you is gauge pressure. So we're going to point at our palm, and that means we want you to check your gauge. So we want to know what pressure you're at, because we always want to end a dive with at least 500. That's just a safety measure. So that's a very important one. So point at palm, give us your gauge pressure. And then, is there another one?
There's probably a bunch, Ronnie. I don't know.
Okay.
I can't remember right now, but you would want to answer. So like if you have a full cylinder, you're going to have 3000 PSI. So it's 3000. You know, if you have, let's say you're halfway through your dive, whatever, you're halfway through your air, you have 1500, you're going to go 1500. And different people have different ways of doing this. In some cases, they're going to tell you, you know, use your left hand for this and your right hand for that. I just tend to use one hand for everything. And by the way, we do have at least one person who's going on the Georgia Aquarium trip. And that's Julia, and her sister is a ballerina. And so we call this the ballerina way when we say okay at the surface. Some people do ballerina method where they kind of put the tips of their fingers, and the rest of us do, you know, the palm. But yeah, Julia may want to do the you know, the ballerina method for her okay on the surface.
Okay, for our next part, we're going to be, I want you guys to tell me what the signal means. So what is this one?
Okay, underwater.
Very good. Oh, okay. Apparently there's a little bit of a editing error there. We'll just have to come back to that one. So this one, I believe they are waving.
Help.
Awesome. Very good.
Your problems.
Very good.
Stay at this level.
Awesome. Awesome.
Buddy up.
Yep. Very good.
Out of air.
This one's low on air, to be specific. But like I said, we don't really use this one very often. This is the one that we use more often.
Out of
And that
air.
is, like you said, out of air.
And we should probably clarify that we just use it often because we practice a lot. We're not actually out of air.
Yeah.
That would be bad.
Up.
Up or
Ascend.
Very good. And I think the one that we missed that was hidden was okay on the surface, which makes sense because it looked like a surface shot. All right, so ascending. So this is your decision to end a dive. So you're going to obviously give a hand exchange, check your gauges. We actually had a funny one when Jacob and I were diving a couple weeks ago at Morrison. My battery had died and we didn't realize until we were in the cavern. And I was like, oh, well, I guess we have to end this dive now. So we went back up, changed out the gauge, and had another dive, and it was great. So begin your ascent, vent your BC. So this is kind of reversing what you did earlier when you added air to your BC as you got deeper. Now, when you're coming up, you have to release it. Otherwise, you'll come up too quick. Track buddy, especially out in the ocean or something like that. In the spring, that's not really too difficult to do unless you got really bad viz. Safety stop, like I mentioned, we end every dive with a safety stop. And then surface. And this is something that we're going to practice in the pool. It's very important to do a safe surface ascent. So this person is, you know, in the process of doing one. So you have your hand over your head and you're turning 360 to make sure you're not hitting a turtle, make sure you're not hitting a diver, make sure you're not hitting the boat, you know, not hitting a tree. Depending on where you are, it's going to be different things. So this is one of the things we're going to stress to you. And I think someone mentioned this earlier. I think it was Bill. It's going to feel really slow doing the ascent. Because you know you feel like, oh, I could just swim to the surface, but it's a safety precaution that we go slowly. And then, sorry, go ahead.
So a quick question, what is like, when do you vent the BC? Before starting to ascend or while you're doing the hand-to-hand? Or
So pretty much like while you're going up. But really you shouldn't have to do too much air adjusting if you're weighted well.
okay.
Yeah, so if you use a very low amount of weight, there's some people who don't use any weight at all while diving. So it is obviously very easy for them to, you know, adjust their BC while diving.
And then like so I'm a little bit confused in one part of this. So when you're descending, do you stop when you're descending, do you stop every so often to like swim around? Or you just kind of choose like, okay, we're gonna go 15 feet underwater today and we don't stop, we don't let go of the rope until we reach 15 feet. We only swim like parallel to 15 feet. Like, how do you, if you see something and you want to go check it out, like with your buddy, but like, how do you, can you swim down and then like while you're in the water, swim down a little bit, like tilt down?
So you are certified up to 60 feet once you complete the class. So that means anything up to 60 feet, as long as it's not in a cavern or a cave, is fair game, or in a wreck, I should add. So, you know, as long as it's within your certification, you're absolutely allowed to swim to it. And just a note, most dive sites aren't really going to have ropes. Ropes are generally for like ocean dives and stuff like that, and you'll pull yourself down to it. So if we get to do some diving in Panama City, we'll get to do some rope training, or, you know, get to, you know, practice on pulling yourself down on a rope. And we'll give you gloves for that and whatnot. So, you know, usually it's just a matter of swimming down, and we'll teach you 3 different ways to kind of get yourself underwater. And then, yeah, you just, especially if you're, you know, like I said, if you're good on weight, it's really easy just to get over to anything. You know, you're underwater. It's part of the reason I like scuba diving, is because it's, you know, I'm very physically limited in a lot of ways. So being underwater, I can just get over just like anyone else, obviously using my hands instead of my legs.
So yeah, sorry. Okay, thank you. Because I was a little bit confused with the when you had to stay level, you know, like stay flat, and with the picture of the person like a little too low or a little too high. Because I could have, I mean, obviously I understand that we're supposed to interpret the picture in the context of the weight, but like I could have just assumed that that person was like swimming down to look at something or swimming up to look at something. So like it is okay to tilt your body down or up depending on like where you want to move, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If I could just say though, that it's not really normal to, I mean, it's not normally you wouldn't be in a complete head down position to descend.
Okay.
It's pretty unusual. And so like when you get really, really advanced diving, I know you mentioned about stopping. Really advanced divers, a lot of times we dive in places where it's neutral entry and you're just going to drop as fast as you can, because we're all experienced divers. We know how to clear our ears, and it's a drift dive, especially where they're going to do this. So drift dives, like in South Florida, there'll be a drift dive. So they want everyone to jump in the water at the same time as quickly as possible and descend as quickly as possible. And so, you know, that would be a case, but honestly, most people don't descend in a head down position. It's harder to clear your ears in that position, for one. But also it's just a little more awkward. So I think you would be more likely to be in a foot down position or neutrally buoyant, just going down, you know, looking around. You always want to look around as you're descending and have a good view of everything. So.
Okay.
And just to add, I think you were mentioning also just your rate of descent, and like Gabrielle was mentioning, and Ronny too, it's like, you know, it'll kind of, you'll feel it when it's happening, and it'll be a little bit, but the most important part is just to make sure that your rate of descent is based on how you're feeling physiologically. So are your ears clearing? You know, do you have pain? Is something going on with you that doesn't feel right? If something doesn't feel right, then, you know, slow down and see if you can make it right. Or again, you'll ascend a little bit so you can fix either, you know, if it's a clearing with your ear or nitrogen narcosis or whatever it may be, like sometimes it's fast, like in these drift dives and things like that. But the most important part is like, you know, physiologically, how do you feel? You know, it might be a little nervous, exciting the first couple of times. So not that type of issue, but it's at a comfortable pace for you. And so that you're keeping up with the dive, but that you're safe.
Okay. Thank you.
And then the final part of ascending is you're going to inflate the BC either orally or with a power inflator. We're going to teach you orally because it's a really important skill to have. So anytime we're in the pool, we're going to have you orally inflate your BCs, which will obviously show you how to do that in the pool. And then switch to snorkel, especially if you're really good on air consumption, you can use the same cylinder for multiple dives. So yeah, like Gabrielle will use the same cylinder for like 4 or 5 dives in a row. And then exiting the water is also super important. So fins in hand. So you can see them on this person's left arm. They've got their fins strapped to them. Mask in place in case you fall back into the water. Regulator or snorkel in mouth, again, in case you fall back in the water. And then another important thing that they don't mention here is give clearance. So don't be so close that if there's turbulence on the boat, they might fall back onto the person behind them. And getting hit with a cylinder from 5 plus feet up is not fun. So be careful for yourself, be careful for others. Another thing with the ladders on some of these boats, there's some pinching potential. So you could very easily get very, very injured with the movement of the waves and the boat and the ladder moving. You get a finger stuck very easily. So do be careful.
Yeah, exit injuries are very common, and especially on private boats. And my first ever time I used Divers Alert Network, I had an exit injury on a private boat in Pensacola, and I was carrying a whole bunch of camera gear from FSU. I was a student at FSU doing underwater photography class, and this massive storm came in, and I was going up the ladder trying to hold the camera, and nobody was there to assist me. And so I was just trying to limping along, holding the camera, trying to protect the camera and all the gear, and using my other hand. And the ladder came back, and thankfully I was wearing gloves, but it severed my tendon, and Divers Alert Network ended up, paying for the surgery and everything. So it's really, really interesting how, something so seemingly minor can end up being a really big problem. So thanks for mentioning that, Ronny.
Mm-hmm. Additional stressors, equipment problems, obviously that would be concerning. So overweighting is the most common thing that we see in the industry. There was a crazy case of someone getting weighed down with 4 to 3 pounds recently. Obviously that is hugely negligent. A big thing that they say in the industry as well is like 10% of your body weight, but we actually teach far less than that. Like I wear 6 layers and I've at most worn 8 pounds,
I wear 4 pounds, and yeah. And yeah, we all work on our buoyancy a lot. So anyone who was certified a long time ago and who's retaking this class, which I think there are a couple people almost in every class who do that, you were probably taught 10%. And trust me, you're going to be so much happier not carrying around all that extra weight, but it does take some practice with the breathing.
It also makes land work a lot harder. Carrying your gear around, especially on long paths, with that much weight is difficult. So definitely we're going to try to be as conservative as possible with our weights.
I have a question about the breathing.
Yeah.
With the ratio of the inhale to the exhale, should the exhale be a lot longer?
No, just normal breathing. Just breathe normally. The biggest thing is just don't hold your breath. So as long as you just keep breathing, you're fine. You can do it as basically as slow as you want. But yeah, just breathe normally.
And to Julia's question, I have heard people say, that they were taught to breathe out more than they breathe in. But you really don't want to have your breathing labored. And often what happens with new divers is they're stressed and they're breathing way too fast. So just nice, relaxed breathing. And Ronny mentioned I'll do 4 or 5 dives on one cylinder. It's because my breathing is I'm so relaxed in the water. I love scuba diving and I'm super relaxed. And I like to teach people how to be relaxed. Ronny's breathing is excellent and his air consumption is great. So is Jacob and Bill and Ximena and Victor, and we're all very relaxed in the water. We don't expect you to be that relaxed as brand new divers, but the more relaxed we can get you in the swimming pool, the better time you're going to have in open water. And so just trust us when we come and hold your hands and try to do other things to get you to relax your breathing.
Yeah, hand holding actually helps out a lot, surprisingly. You wouldn't think so, but it does. So up next is a big one for me, confining wetsuits. So like I said, I wear 6 layers because I get cold real easily. So, you know, there can be constriction and restriction involved with that, which can be very discomforting, especially when it's, you know, middle of summer, super hot. You're going to be very uncomfortable and sweating. One of the things that I've started doing is I'll actually wait.
Hold on, I'm gonna say, give me.
I'll wait until I put on my very last suit when I'm right on the water's edge, because otherwise my stuff is actually too tight and it actually kind of starts hurting to wear it. Losing equipment. This is a big part of the reason we have D-rings attached to our PCs. We have clips and all kinds of things that we use to attach stuff. So there's always, you know, a way to mitigate the chance of losing equipment. Malfunction. Unfortunately, you know, the stuff's going through wear and tear all the time. It's part of the reason we tell you to take care of it as well. You know, dragging it through sand and dirt is obviously going to cause more malfunctions. So there's yearly work that needs to be done just as maintenance. And then whenever there's, you know, problems or O-rings blow or whatever it is, obviously we have to go through and fix that. Jake is really good about fixing stuff on the at dive sites. You know, like I mentioned, my my gauge being out of battery, and you put on a manual or an analog. So do a buddy check prior to diving. We always do this. So make sure that the air is good, make sure that everything, you know, looks right. Check on your buddy as well, especially if you're in a new site. And then, like I was mentioning before, maintain your equipment. So there's yearly checks for a lot of the gear, but there's also just every dive, you know, stuff like cleaning and stuff that you want to do to make sure there's no salt buildup or chlorine or anything like that, or, you know, stuff being left out in the sun to get UV radiation. So task loading, you'll feel task loaded on your first dives. Honestly, I feel like I didn't really get comfortable with scuba diving until after I got certified. Is where I really started, you know, really like feeling comfortable and like, you know, I knew like, you know, exactly what to expect. Relax, think it through. You know, that's the biggest thing is you've got tons and tons of air in your cylinder. You have plenty of time to figure out what's going on and fix it. A big one that I feel like I see is people will start getting water in their mask, whether it's because they didn't get the seal right or because they got a big mustache or because I've seen people do a mask clear, forget to put their strap back on, and then panic because they don't know why water is filling in their mask. And it's really just as simple as just pulling that strap back down. So, you know, easier said than done, though. I understand. Relax, think it through. So low visibility is another thing that can stress people out. I know I get stressed out when there's super low visibility. But, you know, generally, we're pretty good about scheduling and planning trips around visibility and making sure that everyone has a good, enjoyable, mostly clear site. Though this will also go down if we have students that are overweighted, that are kicking on the floor, that are, you know, stirring up the silt and the dirt on the bottom, especially somewhere like Big Blue or something like that. Super easy to blow it out by not being aware of what, not only where you're kicking, but how you're kicking. So going over kicks is another one of the things that we'll go over at the pool. Physical threat, this is not something you need to worry about. Remember that it may or may not be real. So I actually have a video on my YouTube channel with us going diving with sharks and, you know, them coming right up to us. So the sharks are more curious than anything. You know, they're not man eaters. They're just, you know, other creatures trying to get by and survive. But, you know, I understand that it is still nerve-wracking to see, you know, for some people seeing barracuda or shark or, you know, whatever swimming around. Or, you know, honestly, when those Goliath groupers start grunting at you, it's pretty scary when you're underwater. They can be very territorial depending on the time of year. But yeah, you know, you've got your buddy, stick together and just, you know, figure out what the course of action will be. So perhaps the biggest threat, ego threat. This is something that we see a lot. you know, from people not wanting to listen and thinking they know everything, or just think, oh, you know, I've gotten scuba certified. I can go into a cave. I can do a cavern. No, there's specialty courses for that reason. Don't go past your certification. Don't go past 60 feet. You know, don't get hurt. There's no reason to. There's plenty of time to get certified for additional classes. So don't let ego cloud your best judgment, and get the training for the type of diving you want to do. So responses to increase stress. Your heart rate will increase, respiration. You'll have perceptual narrowing. I've definitely had that before. And then big danger of failure to exhale if problem is not solved. So some people will kind of clam up, and you just got to remember to just keep breathing, because even if you can't solve the problem, your buddy most likely can. And then here, I'm guessing you guys can guess which of these two divers are stressed. Gabrielle kind of made a mention of it a little bit earlier.
The left one, because of the bubbles.
Awesome, very good. So this person's breathing hard and fast. So you can see these bubbles are huge. It's a constant stream. They're just tearing through that cylinder. That is a very easy way to go through a whole cylinder in one dive. Whereas this person, a lot calmer, you know, they have the breaks where they're clearly doing full exhales, and, you know, just full breaths. So rarely one problem. Little problems that are not solved can lead to bigger problems that may overwhelm us, and then panic can set in. And obviously that is not fun to deal with. So panic, the point when all logic and mental control is lost and only fight or flight remains. In diving, panic is not an option. Bolting for the surface is something you cannot do, especially at depth. So, you know, being educated, being aware, paying attention to pre-dive instruction and briefs, and you know, knowing what you're getting into, not going past certification. So prevention, plan your dive and dive your plan. This is something that we're going to say all the time. You have a responsibility to yourself, your buddy, other divers, non-diving public, and I'm also going to add the environment. You know, you got to take care of everything. You know, don't be reckless. Know what you're doing. And this is something that we talk about all the time, how an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of remedy, or whatever the saying is. So it's always easier to know what you're doing and know what you need to do before the situation arrives. And then fitness to dive. So diving requires physical and emotional fitness to dive. I would honestly say the emotional is the bigger one. So like it says here, we believe diving is 40% physical, 60% mental. People psych themselves out all the time with diving. We have people who have panic attacks, who have trauma related to water, to, you know, past situations, all kinds of stuff that just really gets in their head. Whether it's the frustration of the failure or whatever, you know, it can be very, you know, we've had, you know, big burly men crying in the pool because they were just so frustrated and you know, at times scared of doing, you know, skills or whatever. So yes, you do need to be physically fit. You know, that's one of the things that we mentioned, carrying gear, getting to dive sites, and you are going to be swimming and there's extra load on your heart. But keeping a good mind is very important as well. And I would add, you know, taking care of yourself. So eating well, drinking well, especially before a dive. When all else fails, stop, breathe, think, breathe, react. And honestly, you can use this anywhere. This is more than just scuba. So stop what you're doing, take a full breathing cycle, think about what you need to do another cycle, and then take action either by reacting to the stressor. So depending on what that stressor is going to obviously have a different path, but you know, hopefully by the end of this class, you'll have a good understanding of how to deal with any situation. So the reaction, solve it underwater if possible. You know, if you don't have to end the dive, that's obviously preferential. You have either spent, you know, hours or days traveling to somewhere, or if you're really lucky, going to like McCullough or Wassissa or something like that. So, you know, you want to enjoy your dive if possible. Solve it on the surface before the dive if possible. So that's something that we do with the pre-buddy checks, is if we have a blown O-ring, you know, just replace the O-ring. If something looks chewed up or beaten up, or, you know, seems like it might be leaking, you know, let's see if we can tighten the hose down. Let's replace the hose. Let's, you know, find a different mask if we're having mask, you know, whatever it is. You know, the earlier you can find it, the earlier you can solve it. Abort or cancel the dive if necessary. Obviously, safety first. If you need to cancel the dive, you do so. Divers should respect each other's decision. So when you're buddied up with someone, if your buddy needs to cancel the dive, you go with them. You know, that's just kind of like a respect thing, you know, common courtesy thing. I would never leave a diver by themselves. That's just irresponsible in my mind. Much easier than doing a rescue as well. So kind of like with the safe scene, you know, it's, or a pound of, or ounce of prevention, you know, it's easier to play it safe than, you know, try to push past something that you shouldn't. And then the panic cycle. So a problem begins to occur, stress increases. So in this case, we have a diver in control. So the stress is recognized, stop, breathe, think, breathe, react, and then solve the problem. And then if you do not, or if you are not in control, you're going to have perceptual narrowing. You're going to forget things. You're going to become even more stressed out because things aren't going the way that you want them to. And then you're going to full on panic. And in certain cases, we've, you know, students will try to bolt for the surface and stuff like that. And you have to, or your buddy will try to bolt for the surface because, you know, they're panicking, and you just have to hold on to your buddy and like kind of talk to them. I know it sounds weird talking to them underwater, but you just kind of make eye contact with them underwater and say like, hey, calm down, breathe. That's another thing that we'll do is if we see you kind of hyperventilating a little bit, we'll go like this underwater, and that means relax, breathe. And we're just kind of trying to get you into the rhythm of breathing. And then, like I said, worst case is flight. So if that does happen, you have to try to calm your buddy down, make sure they don't do that, hurt themselves. So starved for air, stop swimming, slow, deep breaths, signal your buddy, and then ascend to a shallower water. And I've had to do this before, just gassing myself swimming against currents and stuff like that. So, you know, definitely don't push yourself too hard, and, you know, always let your buddy know what's going on if you're having a problem, you know, getting to a certain area or having a cramp or something like that. Oh, and then I think that was it for me. I might have even gone one over.
Thank you, Ronny. Any questions for Ronny? All right, Ximena is up. Thanks, Ronny.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm trying to always get the thing up and then I forget either to unmute or to share my screen before flopping over. But okay, so solving a leg cramp, and I'll just say that the best action you can do is always prevention. So try to prevent that leg cramp from occurring. This has to kind of do with the physical fitness that Ronny mentioned earlier, but also some things you could do: hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. We mentioned this before. If you are hydrated, you are going to be less inclined to have leg cramps. Also potassium, magnesium, all these things. So people always think about, and I think I mentioned this last class, hydrating the day of or doing things the day of, eating well the day of, start that the day before. Everything you do the day before and you put inside your body is obviously still going to play into what happens today. And also some medical things. And that's kind of why we talk about, like going over your medications and things like that, because certain medications can affect your potassium, your magnesium and things like that. So you might need to like add supplements and things like that. However, if one does happen and you're under the water, so you pretty much do the same things that you do on land. Like, you're going to stretch before you dive, because diving, it doesn't seem like it. You think of swimming as not very exercise driven. It's an intense full body exercise. Diving even more so, as we talked about with density and all the things you're wearing. It's just going to be a lot more intense, even though you're enjoying yourself, so you don't realize that you're doing it. And even doing the legs how you're supposed to have them, sometimes if you overdo that, I've done that before on accident, like trying to make sure I'm in the right position, like kind of hyperextended, the back of my leg and gotten a leg cramp. So again, don't freak out, don't stop. You got 3 other limbs to use to make sure you're in a neutrally buoyant position, and then try to start relaxing, because that's going to help too. You not relaxing is not going to help. And then go ahead and do all the things you do on land. You're going to go ahead and stretch your leg out. You can try to grab a part of your fin, to go ahead and help that stretching. If you have a buddy near you and you need assistance, because there's a lot of things around you like silty bottom and stuff, do all the things you do on land, but just try to not freak out, because it's not going to help, and to maintain your buoyancy, and just go ahead and stretch. So let's see. Slow your pace, stretch at the first sign. So of course, the first time you feel it, it's better to just start stretching it down. Then whatever you were doing that made you start feeling that sensation, stop doing that. Less extend your leg. Like I said, grasp the tip of your fin. And if you need to, use your buddy for assistance, so you don't, start sinking down or grabbing things or silting up the stuff around you. Managing physical problems. So entanglement, having a dive knife is always very helpful, or some people have scissors if they don't want to have a knife around. Any type of this equipment is going to be helpful. And also, again, just try to avoid entanglement. So this is what streamlining your gear. If you don't have a bunch of things hanging off all over you, it's less inclined to happen. However, it still can happen. Just again, go back to staying calm, breathe, try to look at the situation, what's happening, and try to disentangle yourself, or use a dive knife or a scissor. That would be self-assistance. If it's something that you can't reach, or it's just easier for your buddy to get to and they have their stuff handy, they can go ahead and untangle you. Yes. Somebody? Oh, sorry. Okay. So like I mentioned, streamlining. These are just prevention measures. If you have all your gear tucked in where it's supposed to be properly, you're just going to be less inclined to tangle. You're going to move through the water easier, which is going to conserve your air and just your physical exertion. Loss of buoyancy. So if your weight system all of a sudden comes off, dump your air from your BC is going to be your first thing. So if you were anywhere where you needed to have any type of air in your BC, that's the first thing you're going to start doing. So if you start feeling yourself going up and you can't control it, don't freak out, because that's going to make you go up faster. You're going to go ahead and try to utilize the dump switch, or else the extra dumps on the side, or your dump valves. Flare during ascent. So if you are ascending and you've already tried to dump your air, flare doesn't mean this way. You're trying to slow down. So you're going to be, I don't know if you can see that from my screen, you're going to be trying to slow down. So the opposite, right? You're like, okay, let me slow this down. And while you're doing that, again, don't start freaking out your breathing, control your breathing, because freaking out your breathing is going to make you ascend faster. While you're doing this, you can start thinking about the other things that you might need to do to help you not shoot up. Again, control your breathing. That's very important. Your power inflator sticks open. So that's, again, your power inflator comes from your regulator set, and it attaches into your BC, into the valve. If that sticks open, first thing you're going to do is try to hold the vent valve vent button open. So that's going to, as air's coming in, you're going to be shooting that air out. And then if it doesn't stop, like if you can't, you know, bang it around and make it stop, you can just disconnect it. So the same way we talked about it in the last session where you have to clip it on, and you'll see this more in person, you can go ahead and disconnect that from the BC, and that's, you know, then we can try to figure out what happens, but it should stop because it should unclog the clog that's keeping it going. If your inflator won't work, so this isn't super terrible if you're pressing and trying to add some air into your BC because you are doing the opposite of these other problems and you're sinking, you can orally inflate it. And we mentioned this before too, and you'll see it more so, it be more understandable in person, but that same connector where your power inflator valve sticks to is where you can also orally inflate. So you can do that under the water, you know, as well. You take some air from your BC, blow it out into your valve. And last resort is to drop your weight. So you don't necessarily want to do this if your inflator isn't working. You know, once you're at depth and you inflate and you're neutrally buoyant, as long as nothing else is going on, it's not like you need to call the dive because of that. As you're cognizant of it, you're aware of it, so you know now that you need to dump and orally inflate. Weights are expensive. You don't want to drop them. And also you just, you know, you may need them at some other point of the dive. And also it can cause you then to ascend more so than you actually want to. So, you know, that's like the least thing you want to do. And in fact, if you have a buddy and they seem fine, if you can remove weights and hand them to them, that can also work as well. So out of air emergencies, have you checked your gauge lately? So you want to check your gauge, like you don't want to be like super duper crazy about it where you can't enjoy your dive. But you know, try to keep in mind, you know, like, I don't know, I don't really know how to say time underwater because time can pass very strange underwater, but it's a good thing to do. And especially if you're open water, you all are open water students, if this is where you're diving, you're going to want to be checking anyways in any place that you can accidentally go past your depth, which you can't do. You don't want to do that. So, you know, you're going to randomly be checking. So anytime you check your gauge or any other, your console for any reason, just check your air. It just takes your PSI. It takes a couple seconds, you know, so anytime you're like, hey, let me just check this. And anytime you check yours, remember to ask your buddy what theirs is too. So of course, not a crazy amount of times, you know, so but the air that you consume isn't going to be the same as the person that you're with. That'll happen later on when you're a very good diver and you and your buddy know each other really well and you dive with people who consume air the same as you. But also things can happen where you can have leaks and you just don't know. So you want to check your gauge, ask your buddy what their gauge is so you can be monitoring that. So there's a difference in emergency out of air situations. Can anyone tell me what a dependent out of air emergency scenario might look like, or what you can use at yourself dependent upon your buddy?
Their octopus?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so that would be kind of like there's another one. Can somebody else tell me another one? So that one would be both of you breathing off of the same cylinder, but one of you is using the octopus, and the other person is using their second stage regulator. What would be another dependent source if that's not available?
Just sharing your regulator or your breathing apparatus, passing it back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so if you're doing that, what can someone tell me quickly, like what's an important thing to remember if you are sharing one source and the other person has the source? What should you be doing?
Exhaling.
Yeah, exactly. So same scenario. So, you know, you're going to take a nice good breath, and then when you're sharing it, you're going ahead and blowing out. And of course, in this case, this is not a situation where you would keep diving. You are ascending at this point. And if you can do this and you're ascending safely and you can do a safety stop because there's enough air in the cylinder and you guys were at a depth, you know, and for a while, and you don't want to get in deco, you know, then do that. But that would be that type of scenario. So octopus breath and buddy breath. Can somebody tell me an independent? What happens if your buddy either has a similar situation for whatever reason, or they're just not around? How would you, out of air, you know, save yourself? Like if we're not freaking out, what's the first thing that we can do?
Get air out of your BC.
That would be if you have any air in there. I would think that that's probably like one of the probably last things that you can do. So that, you're not going to have a backup scuba unit, so I didn't even touch on this one in some places. So in independent, you do an emergency swimming ascent. So, you know, anytime that your regulator isn't working, you're going to contact your buddy. Let them know. If you can't contact your buddy and they can't share with you, then you're going to do an emergency swim ascent. However, it doesn't need to be a crazy flailing situation. You're going to start going up in a controlled fashion, blowing out with the air that you do have. So, however, you can do certain things. Like one, you can like blow into your regulator and see if it will unjam. You can also take your octopus and start using that, because you know, there's certain things where there's like out of air, where you are actually out of air, and it might just also be like your regulator, right? So you can always try to use your octopus and see if that happens. If that doesn't work, then you're going to start this emergency ascent. So a positive buoyant descent is when you are going to be able to have air in your BC, and you're going to positively ascend, sorry. Yeah. And then the emergency ascent, of course, is when you're going to swim up. So while you're doing those things, like most of the time you'll have enough air inside of your person in order to do an emergency ascent. But I guess in the event, like you mentioned, in the event that that you don't feel like that's going to happen, or you're going to run out, you can certainly try to use I think, Gabrielle, if you told me one time somebody did, what was it, with the power inflator, or was it from the dump valve? I don't know if she's there. She might have taken a break. Sorry. Yeah, but that's something you could try if you really feel like you're not going to make it to the surface.
I'm sorry,
But
I
more
was
than
on
likely,
the other side of the room taking care of the foster kittens. But yeah, I'm listening. I just was trying to run over to the computer.
No worries. Yeah. Okay. So sorry, let me move this, because this is location of the octopus regulator. So sometimes people have these in different places. Generally, so some people will do this, and then that's not what we do. So we almost have these necklace type bungees, and they have like a little circular lip. That's a bungee type clip, and we'll have it there, and you'll just have it right under your neck. And the reason why is once you start getting, once we get into the pool and you are using your equipment, you'll see how many different things are hanging off of you. I mean, and you're going to streamline them, you're going to have them clip down, but I can promise you, like when you're trying to do something, it's like, where are these things on me? And obviously, like certain things is like you can have some seconds to look around, but you know, your air is not something you want to mess around with. That's just the easiest place for it to be. It's always going to be right here, like right under your neckline on your chest. You're going to be able to take it out, use it yourself, or take it out or give it to somebody. The person on the left, I guess that isn't the worst, you know, it's clipped, it should be easy to see. I just, those type of things, I feel like sometimes even ones that I have that are snug, I've had things that like have crept out of them in one way or another. Who knows, I'm moving my equipment around or something. The one on the leg, I would not recommend at all. We don't do that. That's just really far away. And you'll see that when you have your equipment. So out of the air octopus use. So, you know, we were doing the hand signals before. Low on air. Again, you want to be checking your gauge often, not crazily often, but a good amount of often. You're going to be asking your buddy if you recognize, and you'll notice this if what type of air consumer you are, and that's going to sort of give you an idea of how often you need to check. But you'll also start recognizing the differences between how much air you're consuming and your buddy is. And if your buddy consumes a lot more than you do, then you might want to be asking them more often, just because not everybody is super cognizant of time under the water. So if you're low on air, you know, you want to ascend. However, if we're out of air, like we talked about, you're going to do this out of air signal, you know, get in contact with your buddy, tell them you're out of air. And then you guys are going to start swimming towards each other. And on this thing, we don't know. I've trained under 3 different agencies and none of them do this, including SEI. And it says in the book. So if that's a question, answer it this way. However, you notice too, your primary regulator, the one that's consistently in your mouth, has a much shorter hose than your octopus. Your octopus has at least your hose and a half almost on it. And so it makes more sense to keep the shorter hose with you and to give your buddy the octopus. And when this happens, you're going to be next to each other. So you do a safe ascend. You guys are actually like, this is one of the few times underwater and diving that you'll actually be touching each other like that. And you'll be going up sort of arm locked. And so it's not that the person is super far away, you know, but if something happens and you need to move, obviously you want them to be having the longer regulator so it doesn't get snatched out of their mouth or vice versa, right? So we don't do this. We keep our primaries and we give our octopus away. And yeah, so kind of like I mentioned, if this happens, if you're the receiver, you go ahead and take the octopus and you guys just start, you know, if it's everything is, you know, you don't keep the dive going, but at this point, everything is sort of in a safe setting where you can then have a safe ascent up. And so you do the same thing as your regular ascent, you know, at the same pace, and you'd go ahead and do your safety stop as well. And yep. And so that's just showing, you know, coming up. Since you don't, you know, your air is out, your BC may or may not need to be dumped, but you know, the buddy is doing that as well. They're dumping it as they go. So again, you're telling out of air, this is the buddy breathing one we talked about. So if for some reason there's no octopus, which there shouldn't be, you should have one, but let's say that there's something wrong with it, it's not working. Same thing, you guys are going to be touching these.
You could be at a resort where they rent these things and there's no octopus. Yeah. So there are definitely plenty out there that don't have them. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that hasn't happened to me yet, but Gabrielle has dived a lot all over the world. So she definitely knows what she's talking about. So if it doesn't have it, but yeah, so then you want to do the buddy breathing and you're going to be, again, holding on to each other and, you know, you have control. The person who owns the cylinder with the air has control of it. The other person, you know, is holding onto it too, but you're doing, you know, the sharing. It's almost like, I would say, not necessarily the one person, because obviously you're not trying to yank it out, but, you know, there needs to be some type of communication going where, you know, okay, now I need it, now you need it, and so forth. So yeah, like they're doing there. Yeah. So, and of course, like we mentioned, always exhale when you have the regulator out of your mouth, because you're doing that same, you know. What law is that? Can somebody tell me? Ascending, blowing out while ascending. Well, it's several of them, but we talk about it with the balloons. Does anyone remember with the balloons? It's so Boyle's balloons. So, and then out of air, emergency independent. Buddy's too far away, you're going to go ahead and start doing the emergency ascent. Same situation with Boyle's balloons. You're going to want to be slowly blowing out as you ascend, continuing to exhale. And if your regulator's in your mouth, you can continue to attempt to breathe off of it. That actually can sort of almost help your body, like trick your body into thinking you're getting a couple of air. So if all else has failed, you're going to do a positive. So that's when you're going to dump your weight so that you essentially are, this is going to probably put you in deco. So again, last case scenario, but you're going to do a positive ascent. You're going to dump your weight, try to use whatever, try to inflate your BC if you can, because that might be working if it's just something wrong with the regulator system. And you're going to do a positive buoyancy ascent. So which one of these would you choose? I find this to be kind of a funny question. But would you, I don't know if it tells me the answer, I forget, I'm sorry. Would you rather do which of these was your favorite position, I guess? If you were in an out of air emergency, what's the ideal situation?
Octopus breath.
Yeah, that's right. A buddy octopus breath, and to do a safe ascent. So anytime you can do a safe ascent, that's the way you want to go. So, and then the second one would be, of course, anything where you can do air sharing, whether it's the octopus or the buddy breathing you want to do, because again, this creates a scenario where you can do a safe ascent. And then the last of the possible safe ascents would be to attempt, depending on what your depth is and what you think your capacities are, is to safely ascend as an emergency ascent. And then lastly, you would do the positive ascent. So this is important to remember. The deeper you dive, the faster you use your air. We keep talking about this with laws involving pressure and volume. So again, this is just important. Check your air, check your air, check your air. The least familiar with your diving capacities that you are, I'd say the more often you want to check it until you get really familiar with your air consumption rates in various places, because of course, the deeper you are, the more things you're looking at, the more things that you're doing, the faster you're going to use your air. So on deck with 500 PSI. So this is something where anytime that you're running near that area, or again, it depends on what we're doing. If we're doing some drills in a very controlled environment, we might, if we're right around each other and we're monitoring you guys, then that's something where we would be like, it's okay, we just got a couple things more and we're doing these things at this very shallow place. But if you're out doing recreational diving, you do not want to be under the water with 500, you don't want to be somewhere at depth with 500 PSI. When you start getting under 1,000, you really want to start monitoring and start working your way back up to the surface if you're not super familiar with your air consumption rates. So on deck with 500 PSI means you want to be either at your safety stop or already coming up from your safety stop with that, until you're really, really comfortable with your air consumption capacities. So yeah, anytime you're monitoring that, just you let your buddy know, and that is time to go up. So it's whoever's getting to that place first, right? It's not just you. So if you have a buddy and you've recognized that they're a heavy breather and you're checking your gauges often and asking them, and they're starting to get close to that number, it's time to start working your way up. Managing emergencies, prevention. Be prepared. The more you know about your dive site, the more, as you get more and more comfortable, you'll recognize things about yourself. Ideally, if you're, you'll get some dive buddies that you dive with often, but sometimes you'll be in situations where you're not. So the most prepared you can ever be is just what you know about yourself and what you know about your dive site. So there's like many sites, particularly on Facebook, there's a whole bunch of dive groups and things like that. You can Google it. You can pretty much pull up every dive site I've ever tried to go to or wanted to go to just for future interest. You can Google it. The dive community is really good about that stuff. They're really great about sharing. So you can look at weather, you can look at all these things. So the more information that you can find out about the place that you're going, the site that you're diving, what the conditions are that day, and all these things, the better. The more prepared and comfortable you are with your equipment. You know, if you don't have your own and you're constantly renting, like try to get familiar with it before you just head into the water. So all of these things are going to help you with managing emergencies. And then taking a first aid CPR oxygen class, you know, typically, you know, outside of diving, you would do first aid and CPR, but with diving, you want to add in that oxygen. So there's oxygen, there's dive classes, there is first aid CPR and O2 classes offered for divers. Gabrielle offers some. I think we have one coming up. I would recommend this for any divers. So, you know, people sometimes do this a little bit later on in their diving skills, but like for me, I you know, have been in scenarios where in the past where this would have been, I had the training and I just wasn't as comfortable with it, comfortable enough to react as quickly as I could have in certain situations. And the more, and so I take them all the time, not even just when I need to. Anytime they're being offered anywhere in the various things that I do, I just sit in on them if I have to or whatever, or I want to. And my daughter knows them too, and she's had to utilize this recently. And so I just feel like the more comfortable you are with doing this, the quicker you are going to be to react. And that's a huge part of preparation, right? Is like practice. So.
And I do, have,
it's not,
just so you know, Ximena, I do have a class coming up, first aid, CPR, oxygen, and it's not just for people who are divers, it's for anyone, but of course I mainly get divers, and that's in February. I also have a DRAM class, which is diver rescue and accident management class in February. So
I couldn't remember if that was still the name since I know they changed it, but or the
Divers
thing
Alert
was changed, but yeah.
Divers Alert Network changed the DEMP name. The DEMP name is no longer.
DEMP, that's what it was. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So I recommend taking these classes. They're just great, and they'll just make you feel more comfortable, more prepared to do stuff. So, and let's see. So recognizing serious injuries. Can somebody tell me what's like the most common sign of decompression illness? Most common, most often seen, first one usually to pop up.
I think muscle soreness. I could be wrong.
That's one of them, but that's not the usual one. Yeah. Close. It's joints. So joint pain. You'll feel, you know, like obviously if you have pain in your joints anyway, not that. Some people get out. It's like, oh, but do you always have this? Yes, that's not that. So it'll be like an uncommon for you pain in your joint. We don't use this word. It's the same as calling cylinders tanks. We don't do that. We just use the real name. So decompression illness, decompression sickness. But if you do hear this, that's what they're talking about, because there's a lot of people who will. So embolisms. So those are, you know, air or can be arterial air embolisms in your body caused by that. Signs and symptoms, like we talked about, you'll be ill feeling. Joint pain is the most common. Vision problems, cough, chokes, unconscious, that's way later, but yes, labored breathing, loss of sight, bloody froth, heart stopping, and it progressively gets worse. So if you don't usually have like joint pain, like I said, if you have arthritis or something like that, like I have arthritis in my shoulder. So if my shoulder starts hurting after a dive, I'm going to think it's because I was exerting myself in the water and not because of this, because that's common for me. But if it's something that doesn't usually happen and it's starting to bother me, especially right now, like we mentioned to you guys have DAN insurance right now that's offered through Gabrielle. It's through Gabrielle because you guys are open water students. But once you get your certification, highly recommend getting DAN insurance, because if you're feeling anything, even if you are like, I don't even think this is a big deal, I just feel kind of funny, call. They don't care. They're open 24/7. Someone will be there to walk you through it. And I'll tell you that oftentimes, at least in my experience with people I know that have called them, it's, you know, it's not result. They're not like going to be like, you need to go to the doctor all the time. They don't get anything from that, you know, so they'll walk you through it and they'll try to find out. And oftentimes it'll be something else. Like my friend had really, really, really bad headaches all the time. She thought she was going to have to quit diving. It was a hydration issue, and they were able to identify that over the phone. But in the event that it is more serious, they should be able to they can find the closest hyperbaric chamber and get you the help that you need. So just, you know, highly recommend Dan, but also if you start feeling any of these funky things, just go ahead and give them a call. You know, worst thing is, you know, that you're embarrassed, but, you know, best thing is that they save your life. So marine life injuries, stings, cuts, abrasions, and punctures. You know, marine life is there. We just have to remember to keep our hands to ourselves, kind of like kindergarten. Don't touch things you shouldn't touch. Just look at them and give them their safe space. Sea and safety, ABCs, basic life support. So can anyone tell me what ABCs are? If you think about CPR.
Breathing and chest compressions.
Yeah, so it's airway, breathing, and gosh, now I was just about to say the C and it popped out on my head. It's not chest compressions. What is it, Gabrielle?
Circulation.
I don't.
Capillary
Yes, thank
refill.
you. I got like the biggest brain fart all of a sudden. Thank you. Yes, so airway, breathing, and circulation. So you want to check the airway, check the breathing, check the pulse. So if something, yeah, calm and hot water, vinegar. We talked about some of this stuff on the last time, like things you can do if you do have injuries. You know, if you're going to help someone, make sure the scene is safe. You're going to do CPR, you check their airway, check their breathing, check their circulation. Be calm, follow your emergency plan. Again, this is why we talk about being prepared is better. If you are prepared, you will not just have a dive plan, you will have an emergency plan and you will follow it. If you have hot water available and it's supposed to be what you're doing, use that. Vinegar for certain types of stings and such. Involve medical assistance as needed. You can always call Dan. They can tell you whether or not you need medical assistance outside of that, or if it's something you can treat at home. Calling for help. Again, recognizing that need. If you're unsure, call Dan. They'll let you know. But if you are unsure, you might need it. And maybe when you even call emergency, they can walk you through whether that's needed or not. But, you know, just use your good judgment. Taking a CPR first aid class will also help you be able to judge those situations better. So begin rescue and first aid if needed. Medical help, again, not just have a dive plan, have an emergency plan in place so that you have all these things readily available and you know what to do. So having those plans in place will make you better prepared for when the time comes to use these things. And again, if unsure, call Dan. Dive planning. So there's some factors to dive planning: the health, your buddy's health, climate, travel, weather. I would also say your Divemaster health. You can dive in some funky places sometimes. And if your Divemaster, you've never been there and you're not like the most comfortable diver and your Divemaster looks like maybe he was partying last night, maybe that's not the boat you want to go on. Maybe you want to call that. But so basically the health of everyone around you, because having any emergency situation, even if it's not with you, is not fun. Climate. So again, this is all part of your dive planning. And we mentioned this to you before when you were dive planning. It doesn't just have to do with your actual physical dive planning as setting where you're going to start and stop. It's planning your dive, Googling the site, using NOAA stuff, finding out what the climate's going to be like, finding out what the current's going to be like. Because they could say, yeah, tomorrow's going to be wonderful and beautiful and all these things. But if you don't check the tide reports, it's not the same. You know, if you go out because you hear it's going to be a beautiful, wonderful day at 8 a.m. and you go at 12, not the same day. You know, you have to go and check all of these things. Traveling and weather. So are you rested, nourished, qualified, and apprehensive? So Again, people talk about doing things the day of, hydrating the day of. I'm a firm believer in starting really your whole life, but the day before at least, the things you eat, the things you drink, things you put in your body the day before are really going to affect your dive the day of. Make sure you're well nourished. Again, qualifications. Don't do diving that you're not comfortable with, not like a healthy uncomfort, but like that you're not comfortable with and that you're not qualified for. And never let somebody who is more certified than you and wants to be your dive buddy convince you to come and do things with them that they're certified for and you're not. So you have to be qualified and you have to be comfortable and prepared for that. Advanced planning again. Where are you going? Who's going to be your dive buddy? What is the dive? If it's through a company, look up their reviews. You know, obviously some people are really crazy. It's like you look up Yelp reviews and they're like these weird things situations. So just make it make sense, you know, look at it and see like if they're constantly, you know, doing dangerous things or they rip people off, like don't go there, go somewhere else. Sometimes spending a little more to live is a better idea all the time.
Ximena, we're going to get into
Yes.
more of this later. So I would just try
Okay.
to go ahead and move along for the rest of your presentation so Victor can get to his as well. But we'll be
Yeah.
talking more about those kinds of things later.
Okay. So again, preparation is kind of the same. And again, we talked about that too. So learning your dive tables, there's, as you can see, top table A, table B, and table C. So table A is referencing that first dive. You're going to be looking at the depth that you're going and for the time that you're going. It's for a single dive. So if you're only going to do one dive, you'd only use that. If you're going to do more dives, then you need to also use table B, which is going to be your surface interval. So it's basically going to tell you like wherever you end up from your first dive, how long you need to wait on the surface to safely be able to go on your second dive. So it's like air credits. And then table C is going to tell you what your residual nitrogen is. So you can add that to get back to table A so that you can figure out how to safely dive your next dive. And then bottom time is basically what's included when you descend, the amount of time you spend at depth, and it's usually what your max depth is or the depth that you spent like the most time at. So if you know, whatever, if you will talk more about that later, but it's basically the amount of time you spend at the bottom and then the amount of time you spend to get to your safety stop, right? And
Yeah,
then your
bottom,
safety
the
stop.
bottom time is from the moment you descend until your safety stop. It includes your
Yes.
entire dive, but ends at your safety stop.
Yeah, that's what I said. Okay. So start, like it said, and ends at your safety stop. Oh, and that's planning dive. I think this is me too. So can you get out your dive tables?
Yeah, I put it in the chat box as well. I put a electronic version if everyone would just take your dive tables out if you have them. And if not, just go ahead and click on the thing that I put in the chat box, which is the electronic version of the air dive tables. And then you can follow along with Ximena, and then you can follow along with Victor after that.
So can anybody tell me how long I can stay at 50 feet for? This is a single dive, so the table A.
$80. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Good job. Who said that?
Yeah, I was like, I couldn't hear it very well.
Oh, Virginia, me.
Yeah.
Well,
Which Virginia?
one of the Virginias.
Which one? Okay.
Good job.
Okay. And how long can I stay at 80 feet for?
32 minutes.
And how long can I stay at 100 feet for?
18 minutes.
180 minutes.
No.
18, sorry.
Yeah, no.
Not what I
Go
meant.
to
Sorry, I didn't mean to say 180.
180.
I was looking at the wrong thing.
You would be dead. I heard somebody
I know.
I heard somebody say 18.
Yes, it's 18.
Okay.
Good job.
Oh. So So decompression theory. So, and again, Victor's going to go over this a bit, but decompression theory. So basically you start your dive 1. Real quick, can anyone tell me what type of diver you start with in the letter group? If you're starting from the very beginning. So it's A. So you always start at A because it's the beginning, right? So you haven't dived, you didn't fly recently, you haven't dived the day before within 24 hours or whatever. So you start at A. Then you've got your depth, the amount of time you go down, and then your surface interval, and then you go to your next dive. You take your residual nitrogen time, you add that to your next dive planning, you take that to your depth, and you go down. And the reason we do this is so that you don't fall under decompression, right? So if you plan your dive and dive your plan, then you should be good. Virginia's raising your hand. Yes, Virginia.
Yeah, I'm really sorry, but that was very fast for me. I was still trying to figure out what table I'm supposed to be looking at now. Is it B?
Okay,
Is
so
it C?
don't, yeah, Victor's gonna really get into that right now. So I just kind of wanted to rush it because it's just gonna be confusing. But basically, the tables are your dive planning so that you don't go into decompression, right? So you're gonna be using your bottom time for your dive 1, your surface interval, so that gives you your extra free time because you came up and hung out in the surface for a while, and then you are using, so it's basically the formula utilized to calculate your actual bottom times together so that you can create a dive plan to not go into deco, right?
And
You don't
Ximena,
want to go.
if you'll click through the animations in this, what this slide is showing
Okay.
is basically that decompression theory. We are managing our nitrogen. It's all about managing the nitrogen. So after, dive 1, you can see we start out dive 1 with no nitrogen load. As we dive, we get more nitrogen load. We do a surface interval. We get rid of a little nitrogen. We do dive 2 and so on. And so that's why we use dive tables, is to manage our nitrogen load.
Okay, so
Yeah, so
nitrogen
the
is like the light blue.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but we're not looking at a table in particular for this part or
No,
a
no,
formula ourselves. Okay.
no. This was
Okay,
just.
You
to
do that with
basically-
Victor.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is like the sciencey, so yeah. Okay. Yeah. And again, just if you're prepared and you've done your dive planning and you've done your legwork in advance and you've practiced your stuff and you know your equipment and you know your dive buddy, just get that out there and have fun. Just be safe while you're doing it. So module 4 summary, we covered diving skills, managing physiological problems, managing excess stress, managing physical problems, emergencies, and we touched on dive tables. Victor's going to get into that a lot more, but does anyone have any questions for any of these things before we move on? Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks, Ximena.
While Victor's getting ready, I'll just say I apologize. I do storytell too much, so I'm working on that. Sorry.
Yeah, you gotta. Yes,
the problem I have.
You can be a little verbose,
Yeah.
but
I had many years where I was doing training with like teenagers, and so it was a lot more like you had to be more entertaining. So
well, we have
it's kind
teenagers
of
here.
stuck
So
in my head.
we do have teenagers here, and some younger. So good job, though. Thank you.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, because I don't know what happened with my computer that now I can access to Zoom through the application. Is going through the web. So this is looking a little bit.
I see that you're actually using the web version of Zoom rather than the app.
Yeah, and I don't know why.
I can help you fix that, but not
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, we can do this another time. But anyway, okay, we're gonna start with module 5. Ximena did a great job introducing you to this, and I will try to go a little bit slow because this is the core part of diving. Okay, so we talk about all the laws, Boyle's law, and dive tables is actually more related to Henry's law. Okay, so when we were talking about the compression theory, basically we are managing the nitrogen in our body. Okay, so the tables, what is giving us the safe time we can be underwater and surface, all right, following the safety measures, the breathing continue, doing the safety stop at 15 feet for 3 minutes, and then we can surface and we're going to be okay. But if we exceed those time limits underwater, the amount or the saturation of nitrogen in our tissues is so high that we will suffer another compression accident. Okay, so, and that's of course something we don't want. Every and any recreational diving is a no decompression diver. So decompression actually what means, if you have to stay on the water at a shallower depth in order to release, to outgas that excess of nitrogen in your body. As you breathe, you're going to be releasing that extra amount of gas that is being accumulated in your tissues. Okay, once you're in the safe side, you come to the surface and you're going to be okay. So this is one of the most important things. Again, we're going to go through more into the details of dive planning, and everything is about reducing the risk of the compression sickness, nitrogen saturation, as I was telling you, and that's exactly what dive tables are all about. Also, in the future, we will talk more, or we will introduce, when you move into advanced diver, the use of dive computers to do the planning and to do your dive. And we always, and we recommend, please always use the SEI air table. Each agency have a different air table, and they vary a little bit because they use different formulas to estimate their non-decompression limits. They're look-alike, but when you go into planning, I think we know that SEI air table is really in the very safe side. Okay, again, going through some definitions and rules. Bottom time starts at the surface when you enter the water and ends at the safety stop. Okay, so it's not when you surface again. It's when you go to the safety stop. That's when your bottom time ends. And then of your bottom time, the safety stop would add 3 minutes, right? The required decompression diving is too deep and too long. So if you don't want to go too deep and stay in the water too long, because then you will go into decompression dive. And again, we are recreational divers, no decompression diving is our rule. Recreational diving is not required stop diving, but we do a safety stop as a measure. We already talked about the SEI diving limits to 50 feet, maximum 80 minutes, 80 feet to 32 minutes, and 100 feet for 18 minutes. If in between, go to the next greater time or depth. So what it means, if you look at your tables, for example, in this column where it shows you the depth, it goes every 5 feet, right? So 20, 25, 30, 35, 50, 55, and so on. But what if you went down and your gauge showed you that you were in 38 feet of water? That was your max depth. So 38, you move to the next greater time or depth. In this case, it's going to be depth. Exactly the same you will do with time. So if you are planning for 24 at let's say at 60 feet, you are planning for 22, but you actually stay there 25, then there is not 25 in the table. So you move to the next greater one. So you will move to the 28 minutes box. Okay, and we will practice this. We will have chance to understand this a little bit more. But the important thing here is always move. If you don't see in the table the number that you're looking for, always go to the greatest one. That way we're going to be in the safe side, never to the lower one. Ronny mentioned this, and different friends here have mentioned about the descent rate. 30 feet per minute is a hand over hand if you are going up on a rope. And for high altitude diving, reduce your times and depths. And that's because of the reduction of pressure as well. And if you are diving and flying after, make sure that you wait at least 12 to 24 hours, and that will depend on how many dive and how saturated you are with nitrogen, okay? RNT stands for residual nitrogen time, or depth time, which is time against the next dive. So we will see today, we will start with what if we do only one dive? And then we will move to what if we do 2 consecutive dives? And then we will move to what if we do 3 consecutive dives, okay? So the residual nitrogen time is, for example, when you finish your first dive, you will have some saturation of nitrogen in your body, okay? And that's what the residual nitrogen time stands for. So it means like if you go to your second dive, it is like you already dove some time, or dived previously a little bit more time. I'm gonna explain that a little bit better too. And then when you finish your second dive, you will increase the saturation of nitrogen, and that means it is like you've been there for more time for your third, when you move into your third dive. We will go in the examples, you will understand that better. But this is exactly not the decompression theory, okay? You're accumulating that nitrogen, and you have to add time as because of that nitrogen, extra nitrogen you have in your body. And then we have total dive time, which is the residual nitrogen time plus the next dive time. It means like if after my first dive, my residual nitrogen time is 20 minutes, and then I'm planning in my second dive to dive for 20 minutes. That's my actual bottom time. It's going to be 20 minutes. That's exactly when I'm going to dive. But when I go into my dive tables on my second dive, I'm going to plan like I dive 40 minutes, because I have 20 minutes of nitrogen residual time and 20 minutes of actual bottom time. So that's the total bottom time. We will see that in the examples as well. And again, safety stop for 3 minutes at 50 feet, okay? This is a recommendation that we all practice. It's a good practice for diving. And repetitive dives account for previous dive on that day. Between 24 hours, if you do extra dives, that counts as a repetitive dive, okay? Okay, so how we use dive tables. And we will see that we have all these 3 different tables in the first page. Okay, so the first one is single dive time and groups. So if you're only going to dive one time, you only use that table. You will see how deep I can go, or I will go, and how long I can stay for a not decompression time. Okay, you come to the surface, you go home, you are good to go. But what if you go on a second dive? You're going to do a repetitive dive. Then after your first dive, you will have what we call a surface interval. Okay, is the time that you spend between 2 bottom times. Okay, so after you exit the first dive and when you enter the second dive, that's your surface interval credit, and it's measured in minutes. Okay, so in this table, all the numbers that we see to the right of the depth is all minutes. Okay, everything here is minutes. Down here, these ranges minutes as well. Okay, so we see, for example, 0, 10, it means 10 minutes, and then the one in the top is 52. So that's 52 minutes. So if you stay at the surface between 10 and 52 minutes, you stay in that box. If you stay for 60 minutes, for example, then you look up in that column until you find the time that matches the column.
I'm sorry,
Uh,
Victor, when you said 60 minutes, we look up on which column? A, B, C, D?
Yeah, so for example, if you go on your first dive to 60 feet for 22 minutes, right? You go down in that column and you're gonna be in D, right? So in D, you have only 4 options.
Okay.
10 to 52, 53 to 1 hour and 47, 1 hour and 48 to 3 hours and 3 minutes, and then 3 hours, 4 minutes to 5 hours and 23 minutes, okay? So you will look into that column of that repetitive group. And now I'm gonna explain about the repetitive group. So these letters that we have in between the 2 tables is what we call the repetitive group. As we see, those letters are in alphabetic order, right? So the higher we are in the scale, it means that you have more nitrogen in your body, okay? So for example, if you exit the first dive as an diver H, right? And you stay for 2 hours and you move to your left, then you will enter your second dive as an E diver. It means like you exit H and you enter E. So you are lowering your level of nitrogen in your body. That's what the repetitive groups stand for, okay? So I exit as an H and I enter my second dive as an E. And that will depend on your surface interval time.
Okay, so I have a question.
Yeah.
The 2 times that are in each box for table B, what do those times stand for?
Those is just a range, okay? If you stay, for example, 22 minutes, that will fall into that range, okay? Because it's 10 minutes. If you stay in the surface between 10 and 52 minutes, no matter how can I explain this? If you stay between those 10 or 52, you stay in that box for your planning.
Okay, so let's just follow one all the way through so that I can understand. Is that possible?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you
That's
originally
coming
said,
next. Wait, Victor is just starting to explain. He's going to go through some problems next. It'll all become very clear. So just be patient with the
That's
process,
right.
okay?
And if the question remains, well, let me know and I will clarify that for you, okay? Good. Okay, then after we have the surface interval time, we move into table C, the table to the bottom left, okay, table C, and that table C is what is showing us the residual nitrogen time and the next dive time. So at the top of table C is all these numbers is depth. Okay, so if for your second dive you're going to 50 feet, then you find here the 4 column from the left is 50 feet. And then if you are a diver E, you will match E with 50, and that box that you find there in the intersection has 2 numbers. Okay, the one in the top is the residual nitrogen time, and the one in the bottom is going to be the maximum time you can spend at that depth for another compression dive in your second dive. I'm going to explain that later too. When we do the examples, you're going to get that. And then in the back of your air table, you have what is called table D for dummies, or is the decompression diving. So anything can, go wrong down there. Maybe you were distracted by a really interesting fish, or you were taking pictures and you were not paying attention to your bottom time and you exceeded your bottom time. Then what do? You come to table D, sorry, and then you will have depths and you will have bottom times, and then it will tell you your decompression stop at what depth and for how long. Okay. Of course, we don't plan to use this, and always the recommendation is to check your gauge, to check your time, your bottom time, and your depth at all times. Okay. Or frequently. Okay. Frequently, because at the end we want to enjoy our dive. So let's do our first problem. Let's say that we go to 60 feet, right? And then we're gonna go for 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I know, sorry, it is 40 minutes. I sometimes I just can't see the whole numbers here. Okay, so we go to 60 feet for 40 minutes. So in this example, it's very good because, you know, the box before we have 39, and the rule is always go to the greatest, the next greater one, time or depth. Okay, so 39 is closer to 40, but as we're going to 40, we need to move to the 45 minutes column. Okay, once we hit here 45, we go down that column. We are diver H. We exit our first dive as an H diver, and then we're gonna have a 60-minute surface interval, right? So in that case, 60 minutes or 1 hour is gonna be in this second box of this column. So if we stay here for 60 minutes, we move left, and then we are gonna enter our second dive as a G diver. So we release some of the nitrogen. Then our second dive is gonna be to 50 feet. So here in the top, we have 50 feet, and we are exiting as a G diver. So the question is, how long can I stay at 50 feet on my second dive for another compression dive? And then we have these two numbers, right? So when we do the intersection of G and 50, we have two numbers, 49 at the top and 31 at the bottom. And we mentioned 49 is our residual nitrogen time. What this means, when we go to our second dive, is like as we enter the water, it's just like we already dive 49 minutes. Then to have another compression limit of 50 feet, we only can stay for 31 minutes. If we add these two numbers, 49 plus 31 is going to be 80, right? So at 50 feet, or another compression limit is 80 minutes. We see it here, right? In the next column to the depth is the maximum non-stop dive. Okay, so that's why the maximum time we can spend in our second dive is going to be 31 minutes. Now I'm going to show you in a dive profile, and this is how you're going to see. Yeah.
All right. So we're diving at a depth of 60 feet for 45 minutes, and you come down on H. How do you know that you stop at G? I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How do you know you stop at G? I don't know.
Okay, because you decide that you're going to be in the surface for 1 hour. So if we want to be 1 hour, remember these are range of time. Okay, so if you stayed at the surface,
determined that I was going to be on the surface for an hour?
How's that?
What determined that I was going to be on the surface for an hour?
That's your decision. You can be 10 minutes only.
So that's the time between dive A and dive B?
Yes, that's the time between dive A and dive B.
This is your dive plan, just to be very clear. This is a problem that's being given to you where all these numbers are being given to you. It is pretty normal to have a 1 hour surface interval. In fact, most boats that we dive on, 1 hour is standard. So if
Yeah.
you do a 2-cylinder dive or a 3-cylinder dive, you're still gonna have a 1-hour surface interval. It's very normal.
That's perfect. You were hurt 2 hours for taking dinner or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I get it.
Right, right.
Yeah, if you stay in this problem after 60 feet for 45 minutes, right? If you stay for 2 hours, then when you enter on your second dive, you're gonna be an F diver, right? Because 2 hours is in this range between 1 hour and 45 and 2 hours and 37.
It just wasn't well explained. I didn't understand that. So
Okay, is clear now?
I get it.
Okay, good. So we will give you this type of problems. Okay, so your first dive to 60 feet for 40 minutes, you're gonna be 1 hour surface interval, and then your second dive to 50 feet. How long can you stay, or what's your maximum bottom time for your second dive? And this is what we just did in the example, right? So we exit our first dive as an H diver. We enter our second dive as a G diver. And then we saw on table C that our residual nitrogen time is going to be 49 minutes. Then therefore our maximum no decompression time is 31 minutes, because that's the number at the bottom. We will have two numbers, 49 and 31. 49 residual nitrogen time, 31 is a no decompression time. Let's try to do one exercise. Okay, so let's try to do this one. Our first dive to 70 feet for 20 minutes. And then we're gonna do a surface interval of 30 minutes. And we're gonna go on our second dive to 50 feet. What is our maximum bottom time for our second dive? It's exactly the same exercise we just did, but with different numbers. Try to do that. I will give you 3 minutes.
Some people are already typing in the chat box. This is a pretty easy one, right? So yeah, I think maybe 1 minute. 1 minute would be max is needed for this.
I don't have access to the chat.
Yeah,
so
I'll tell you, several people are typing. We have Virginia, Julia, Gabriella, Sona, all have the same answer so far. And so we'll give maybe 30 more seconds for everyone else to come up with something. And if they haven't, we won't give them the answer yet. We'll find out what they're stuck on. So maybe 20 more seconds. All right, Nora's got it. Julia has it. Lewis has it. Grace, Stan, the other Virginia, the other Virginia. All right, speaking of Virginia's, how about the Daly family? Do you all have it?
No, what is that?
Do you have the answer? The Daly family, I'm asking.
Ah, sorry, I thought you were asking
No, the other
about a
Virginia.
show.
No, you're good. You typed the correct answer in. All right, so who does not have an answer? Is the Daly family still with us? Yes, do you have an answer? We will finish in 8 minutes as promised. So we might be able to go through 2 more problems.
Yeah.
Good job, Megan. There we go. Thank you, John. Sonia. Everyone, Sonia says 42. Was that a typo, I hope? I hope that was a typo. Everyone else said 45. Oh, it was a typo. It was a typo. Okay, 45. Good. Did anyone not get it? let us know. All right, it looks like everyone got it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we went to 70 feet for 20 minutes. We don't have 20, so we moved to 23, right? We go down and we exit our first dive as an E-diver. After 30 minutes, we still remain as an E-diver to our left, right? And then when we cross E and 50 feet, we come that our residual nitrogen time is 35 minutes and our maximum bottom time for a second dive for no decompression is 45 minutes. In that box, you have the answer. Very good. Okay, another exercise. What if we go to 80 feet for 30 minutes? We have a 2 hours surface interval and then our second dive to 70 feet. What is our maximum bottom time for our second dive? Again, as you have it, just type it in the chat box and Gabrielle is gonna let me know when you're ready.
Our first answers are coming in. We have at least 4 students so far. Julia, Grace, Gabriella, Sona. Wow, Julia, Virginia, all with the same answer so far. We'll give them like 20 more seconds for everybody else. All right, the Daily family's got it. Nora, Lewis, the other Virginia, Sonia.
Awesome.
Everyone says
who wants-
13. Stan has it. Stan just typed in. Does anyone
Good.
not have it?
Yes.
All right, everyone said 13 consistently.
Good. So who wants to volunteer and explain this exercise? Just unmute yourself and go.
I'll do it. How do you want me to just walk through the steps?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So at 80 feet on table A, so we would start with table A, and if we go down where it says the depth at 80 feet, on the right hand side, we can look at all the different minutes that we can stay there. So we're going to be there for 32 minutes. So if we go to the right of it, I'm sorry, 30 minutes. The maximum is actually 32. So if we go all the way to the right, the very last box, we'll say 32, and we're gonna estimate up since the other number is 28. And then if we follow that box down, we'll be at column H. So then we were at the surface interval time of 2 hours. So we would go down to the box that says 237, 145, and that would bring us to option F again.
Awesome.
Or not again, I guess that's different than the other one. And then if we follow that into table C, for 70 feet is where we're going to be here. The residual nitrogen count is 29, and the maximum calculated bottom time is 13.
Perfect.
Sorry, everyone.
It's okay. Perfect. It seems very clear. Does anyone has a question? Well, I think it is 10 o'clock in my watch, Gabrielle. We're gonna continue,
It's 9:57, but I'm good with stopping here. Okay, I'm good with stopping here. So
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, thank you, Victor. That's a tough thing to end on, especially after a long night together and it's this late. So good job, everybody. We'll start with this next time. So all right. Any thoughts, questions about everything we've covered tonight?
Hi, Nora.
He couldn't resist. I'm sorry.
Aw. So yes, we have grandparents. We have This is such a cool class with all kinds of, look at that doggy, so cute, Victor. We have,
He's cute.
yeah, super cute. I don't know if you saw my dog crashing the party here a few times, but anyway. All right, well, we will see you next week, okay? Oh, look at your dog in the background, how cute. Aw. So we love animals. The whole leadership team loves animals, so yes. All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
leadership team.
Good
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 job.
night, everyone.
Cheers.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.